Loans will take a long time to pay off. Even then, a public utility project like this will never make what in commercial terms are judged to be high profits. So, while there is a way to go to make sure that the project is a success, if everything is set up properly, the profits should be reliable and worthwhile. To make even a start depends on convincing the banks that the project is low risk and sound. One of the major banks which needs just such convincing is Citibank.
Well, there are a number of things that lenders need to be absolutely confident about. The first is the input into the project. In this case, it's coal. The second is the manufacturing process, the process which makes the electricity, which burns the coal to make the electricity. And thirdly, the sale of that electricity to produce the revenues to repay lenders and to give the equity investors a return on their investment.
But what's the most important factor of all?
Well, without the first stage, the project can't work. That means that we have to be confident that the coal will be produced by the miners on time and when it's needed for the plant to burn and generate and create the electricity. Without that confidence, then it's very unlikely that the international investors will take to the project and supply it the money it needs.
Those bank loans, remember, total £100 million without security or guarantees. International bankers have to make very simple judgments if they're to succeed with this kind of investment. At the root of it all, they must ask, what is the risk to their money? This station, dedicated to supply from a deep mine, would be the first in the world financed this way. And because it costs so much, the plant will have to work to full capacity if it's going to make a profit.
That means that the banks and the investors putting up the money are hypersensitive to the risk of interruption.
Why is that?
Well, Bilsthorpe itself has had a good record for the past 15 years, but banks do recall the fact clearly that the British coal industry has had the longest and biggest strike in history, and only very recently. They don't highlight the difference between the UDM and the NUM. They just consider that mine project investment in the UK has this special degree of risk. Now, all this means for us one thing, that when we sign that coal contract, we have got to mean it, and mean it for a long time ahead.
This is the crux of the matter for British coal, how to guarantee a continuous supply of coal straight from the pit to the power station. Here they have a major problem. Coal contracts have what's known as a force majeure clause. This means that if a strike interrupts the coal supplies, the customer, in this case the power station and the banks, can't sue for compensation if the power station has to stop. Stopping that generation means stopping the income, and the income is the only way the loans can be repaid. All this is a risk that the banks will worry about before they agree to lend what is needed to build the plant. And this means either no loan at all or higher interest, which could mean the project is just not viable. So, how does Malcolm Edwards propose to give the necessary guarantees of supply, which are clearly so vital?
We're not trying to legislate here for the odd day of trouble. The station will have 8 to 10 weeks stock, but we do have to face up to the risk of something long. We thought a long time about asking for a formal non-strike deal. They do work in other industries, but the practical problem here is that if there was some big, long trouble, we would be suing the men and the unions for sums of money which are far greater than they could possibly hope to pay. And all this seemed to be both negative and ineffective. It seemed better not to assume that the worst was always going to happen, but to encourage the best to happen and to keep on happening. So we decided on a positive policy to offer everyone at the pit, on whom the success of coal power at Bilsthorpe is going to depend, a chance of a shareholding, a chance of owning a part of the venture.
And that's why British Coal is offering to make a block of its shares in coal power at Bilsthorpe available to everyone who works at the pit on very preferential terms, just a quarter of their full price. How will the scheme work? I asked Malcolm Edwards to explain.
All we can talk about now is the basic principles, because the lawyers and the financial advisors have a great deal of work to do to firm up the proposals.
So what can people expect to happen after that?
Well, everybody will be kept posted, but no one can make a decision about investing in shares until they've seen the full prospectus, and everyone at the pit will get the full prospectus.
OK, but what exactly is the basis of the scheme that is being put forward?
Well, the present plan is that we set aside a block of shares with a full subscription price of £500,000, and we offer that to everyone working at the pit at a quarter of the price that British Coal will pay. So that's £125,000 in all. You can put it another way and say that anyone who pays a full £1 for one share will get 3 free of charge.
And will the offer be open to everyone?
Yes, everyone who has worked at the pit for 12 months would be eligible to subscribe if they wish. And all new employees would be eligible to participate too once they've worked for 12 months.
Who will actually administer the scheme?
A trust called an ESOP. No, it's not one of the fables, but it's very full of wisdom, and I hope everyone at this place becomes as familiar with it as other successful enterprises.
What's it short for?
Employee Share Ownership Plan. It's an employee share trust to administer the shares, to provide an internal market for employee shares and a pool for new employees.
Does all this mean that the shares aren't actually traded on the stock exchange?
That's right. The shares are not quoted on the stock exchange, and the shares are not for public sale. The way buying and selling shares in an ESOP is dealt with is that one of the major firms of chartered accountants value the shares each year in the light of the way the business is doing, how successful it is and how much of the debt has been repaid.
And if the business is doing well?
Well, then the value of the shares would increase as the debt is repaid. But we want everyone at the pit to keep their shares and share in the success of their power station.
But if people do want to sell, how do they actually go about it?
All shares that are sold have to be sold back to the trust, and then other people at the